The morning rain had just stopped when Samantha Johnson first spotted the engagement ring that would change everything. But what happened next shocked everyone who witnessed it, because this wasn't just any ring, and this wasn't just any broken-down car on the side of Highway 285. Samantha adjusted her rearview mirror one more time, checking the time on her phone. 7:42 a.m. She was cutting it close for her shift at the community health center, but something about the sleek silver sports car pulled over on the shoulder made her slow down. Steam was rising from under the hood, and a man in an expensive suit stood beside it, looking completely lost. "Great," she muttered, already knowing she couldn't just drive past. Her mama had raised her better than that. Little did Samantha know that stopping to help would unravel secrets that had been buried for over a decade. She pulled her modest Honda behind the luxury vehicle and stepped out, her nursing scrubs a stark contrast to the man's tailored clothing. He was tall, probably in his early 40s, with graying temples and the kind of watch that cost more than her monthly rent. "Car trouble," she called out, grabbing the small toolkit she kept in her trunk. The man looked up, relief flooding his features. "Yes, thank God someone stopped. I'm Mark Reynolds. My phone's dead, and I have no idea what's wrong with this thing. I have a board meeting in 30 minutes downtown. I'm Samantha." "Let me take a look," she said, popping the hood. The acrid smell of overheated coolant hit her immediately. "When's the last time you checked your coolant levels?" Mark looked at her blankly. Honestly, I just drive it. My mechanic handles all that." Samantha couldn't help but smile. "Well, your mechanic's not here right now, but lucky for you, my dad taught me a thing or two about engines before he passed." She examined the radiator, noting the small leak. "You've got a busted hose clamp. Nothing major, but it'll strand you every time. You can fix it?" Mark's voice carried genuine amazement. "I can get you to a service station, at least." Samantha rummaged through her toolkit, pulling out electrical tape and a small adjustable wrench. Her movements were efficient, practiced. "This is just a temporary fix, but it'll hold long enough for you to get proper help." As she worked, Mark found himself studying this woman who'd appeared like an angel on the roadside. There was something about her confidence, the way she attacked problems head-on, that reminded him of someone from long ago. "You do this often? Rescue stranded millionaires?" he asked, trying to lighten the mood. Samantha glanced up from under the hood. "How'd you know I wasn't the millionaire?" Mark laughed, a genuine sound that surprised them both. "Fair point. But seriously, I feel like I should be paying you for this." "Just pass it forward," Samantha said, wiping her hands on a rag she kept in the kit. "Help someone else when they need it." This decision would change everything, though neither of them realized it yet. She secured the temporary clamp and stepped back. "Try starting her up." Mark slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine purred to life, temperature gauge settling into the normal range. "You're a miracle worker," he said, getting out to thank her properly. That's when Mark's eyes fell on Samantha's left hand as she closed her toolkit. The engagement ring caught the morning sunlight, a simple solitaire that couldn't have cost more than a few $100s, but it was polished to perfection and clearly treasured. Mark's entire expression changed. His face went pale, and he took an involuntary step backward. "That ring," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the traffic rushing past them. Samantha looked down at her hand, confused. "What about it?" But Mark was staring at the ring like he'd seen a ghost, his successful businessman composure completely shattered. His hands began to tremble slightly, and something that looked suspiciously like tears gathered in his eyes. Where did you get that ring?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. Samantha's protective instincts kicked in. She'd been proposed to in that ring just 3 months ago by David, her fiancé of 2 years. It meant everything to her, even if it wasn't the biggest diamond in the world. "It was my fiancé's grandmother's ring," she said carefully, taking a small step back. "Why?" But the real shock was still coming, because Mark Reynolds was about to reveal a connection that would turn both their worlds upside down. "I need to ask you something very important," Mark said, his voice shaking. "What's your fiancé's last name?" The strange look in Mark's eyes as he stared at her engagement ring sent an uncomfortable chill through Samantha's chest. She quickly wiped her hands on a rag and stepped back from the now purring engine of his Porsche. "There you go," she said, forcing a smile despite the tension crackling between them. "Should run smooth as silk now." Mark blinked, seeming to snap out of whatever trance had overtaken him. Thank you. Seriously, I can't believe you actually fixed it." He reached into his wallet, pulling out several $100 bills. "Please, let me pay you for this." Samantha held up her hands, backing away. "Oh no, I couldn't take that. I was just helping a neighbor out." "But you must let me do something," Mark insisted, his voice carrying an urgency that puzzled her. "What you did today, it means more than you know. Maybe I could help you with something? Wedding expenses, perhaps?" The mention of her wedding made Samantha's stomach clench. She glanced down at the modest diamond on her finger, the ring David had saved for months to afford. "That's very kind, but we're managing just fine." 20 minutes later, as Samantha unlocked the door to her small duplex, she could still feel the weight of Mark's intense stare. The living room welcomed her with its familiar chaos, wedding magazines scattered across the coffee table, bills stacked high on the kitchen counter, and David's work boots kicked off by the couch. "Baby, you're home," David called from the kitchen, emerging with flour dusting his dark hands. At 28, he worked double shifts at the construction site and still found energy to experiment with recipes for their upcoming wedding. "How'd the job interview go?" Samantha's heart sank. She'd completely forgotten to go to the interview after helping Mark. Something came up. I'll reschedule." David's smile faltered. "Sam, we can't keep putting these things off. The wedding's in 2 months, and we still owe the caterer $1,500. But what happened next changed everything." Mark's business card, which she'd absent-mindedly tucked into her pocket, fell to the floor. David picked it up, his brow furrowing as he read the name. "Mark Reynolds," he said slowly. "Why does that name sound familiar?" Samantha felt her pulse quicken. "He's just some guy whose car I helped fix today." "Reynolds Industries," David continued, his voice growing more concerned. "Sam, this guy's worth millions. What was he doing in our neighborhood?" Before Samantha could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you again for today. I'd like to discuss a project that could benefit your community. Would you consider meeting tomorrow? Mark." David read the message over her shoulder, his jaw tightening. "Sam, what aren't you telling me?" "Nothing, I swear. He just mentioned something about a charity car project for underprivileged kids." She set down her phone, but couldn't shake the memory of how Mark had stared at her ring with such recognition, as if he'd seen it before. That evening, as David worked late reviewing wedding budgets, Samantha found herself Googling Mark Reynolds. What she discovered made her breath catch. Article after article praised his philanthropic work, donations to education programs, scholarships for disadvantaged youth, funding for community centers. But it was a photograph from 5 years ago that made her blood run cold. The picture showed a younger Mark at a charity gala, his arm around a beautiful woman who wore the exact same engagement ring that now adorned Samantha's finger. Her hands trembled as she zoomed in on the image. The woman had the same warm brown skin as Samantha, the same bright smile, even similar hair. The caption read, "Mark Reynolds with his late fiancée, Angela Thompson, who tragically passed away in a car accident." The room seemed to spin around her. Why would David have given her a ring identical to a dead woman's engagement ring? And why had Mark looked at it with such pain and recognition? But the biggest shock was yet to come. As Samantha scrolled through more articles about Angela Thompson, she found an obituary that made her heart stop completely. The woman hadn't just looked like Samantha, she had worked at the same community center where Samantha volunteered, had grown up just 3 blocks away, and had been engaged to Mark Reynolds when she died. The coincidence was too impossible to ignore, and as Samantha stared at the photograph of the woman who could have been her twin, she realized that her chance encounter with Mark Reynolds was anything but random. That night, Samantha found herself staring at her laptop screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The name Mark Reynolds had been echoing in her mind since their encounter, tugging at something buried deep in her memory. She typed his name into the search bar and hit enter. The results made her breath catch. Article after article praised Mark Reynolds for his charitable work across the city. Local Millionaire funds youth programs, read one headline. Another proclaimed, Reynolds Foundation provides scholarships to underprivileged students. But what stopped her cold was a photo from 3 years ago showing Mark at a community center dedication ceremony. The same community center where she now volunteered. "Baby, you coming to bed?" David's voice drifted from their bedroom, interrupting her racing thoughts. In a minute, she called back, scrolling deeper into the search results. There had to be more. Something that would explain why his name felt so familiar, why seeing that engagement ring had triggered such an intense reaction from him. The next morning over breakfast, David noticed her distracted state. "You've been quiet since yesterday. Everything okay?" Samantha hesitated, stirring her coffee absently. "That man I helped with his car. I think there's more to it than just a random breakdown." David's expression hardened slightly. "What do you mean?" "He's Mark Reynolds. The philanthropist. He's donated millions to community programs in our neighborhood." She paused, watching David's face carefully. "He seemed really interested in having me work on some charity car project." "Sam, listen to me." David leaned forward, his voice serious. "Rich people like that, they don't just offer opportunities out of kindness. They want something in return. Maybe you should keep your distance." His words stung, even though she understood his concern. They'd been burned before by promises that never materialized. But something about Mark had felt genuine, different from the usual empty gestures they encountered. Later that afternoon, Samantha immersed herself in her volunteer work at the West Side Community Center, helping a group of teenage girls rebuild an old car engine. This was her sanctuary, the place where she felt most like herself. "Miss Sam, why do you know so much about cars?" asked Keisha, a 15-year-old with bright eyes and quick hands. "Because knowledge is power," Samantha replied, guiding Keisha's hands as they adjusted the carburetor. "When you understand how things work, you can fix them. And when you can fix things, you become valuable to your community." But even here, surrounded by the girls she mentored, her mind kept drifting back to Mark Reynolds. What was he really after? And why did his presence feel like a door opening to possibilities she'd never dared imagine? That evening, she made a decision. She would focus on her wedding, on David, on the life they were building together. The charity project was a distraction she couldn't afford, not when they had their own financial struggles to overcome. It was the practical choice, the safe choice. She was just locking up the community center when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "I was hoping I'd find you here." Samantha spun around to find Mark Reynolds standing by the entrance, no longer in his expensive suit but wearing jeans and a simple button-down shirt. He looked different, more approachable, but his presence still sent her heart racing. "Mr. Reynolds? How did you?" "Please, call me Mark." "And I asked around. People in this neighborhood know you pretty well." He gestured toward the center. "They also told me about the amazing work you do with these kids." Samantha felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. "What are you doing here, Mark?" He took a step closer, and for the first time since their initial meeting, she saw something vulnerable in his eyes. "I need to tell you something about that ring. About why seeing it affected me the way it did." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Because 3 years ago, someone wearing a ring just like that one saved my life in ways I'm only beginning to understand." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that made Samantha's pulse quicken. Whatever Mark Reynolds was about to reveal would change everything she thought she knew about their chance encounter. Mark's hands trembled slightly as he set down his coffee cup, the steam rising between them in the quiet diner booth. The afternoon light filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across his weathered face as he looked directly at Samantha. "There's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "About why I reacted the way I did when I saw your ring that day." Samantha leaned forward, her intuition telling her this moment would change everything. The engagement ring caught the light as she folded her hands on the table, waiting. 15 years ago, I was driving through a thunderstorm in Chicago, Mark continued, his eyes distant with memory. My car broke down in the worst part of the city. I was young, arrogant, and thought money could solve everything. But my phone was dead, it was pouring rain, and I was completely helpless. He paused, gathering strength for what came next. A young black woman stopped to help me. She was wearing scrubs, clearly coming off a double shift at the hospital, but she didn't hesitate. She fixed my car in the rain, refused any payment, and when I asked why she'd help a stranger, she just smiled and showed me her engagement ring. Samantha's breath caught in her throat. Something about this story felt impossibly familiar. She said her fiancé taught her that kindness was the only currency that mattered. That helping others was how we honor the love in our lives. Mark's voice cracked with emotion. 3 days later, I read in the paper that she'd been killed by a drunk driver on her way home from work. She never got to have her wedding. The words hit Samantha like a physical blow, but Mark wasn't finished. Her name was Angela Thompson. She saved my life that night, and I never got to thank her properly. After she died, I started the first of many charity foundations in her honor. I've spent 15 years trying to pay forward what she gave me in those 10 minutes. Samantha's world tilted. Angela Thompson. The name echoed through her memory like a bell. Angela had been her mentor at the community center, the woman who taught her about cars, about helping others, about believing in herself. But this revelation would have to wait, because at that exact moment, David burst through the diner door, his face flushed with anger and concern. "Samantha, what the hell is going on?" he demanded, sliding into the booth beside her. "Mrs. Patterson from next door said she saw you getting into some white man's car. I've been calling you for hours." The tension in the small diner became suffocating as David's protective instincts clashed with the delicate moment Mark and Samantha had been sharing. "David, please, let me explain," Samantha began, but he was already sizing up Mark with suspicion. "I know who you are," David said coldly, pointing at Mark. "I looked you up. Millionaire philanthropist with a savior complex. What do you want with my fiancée?" Mark remained calm, understanding David's protective anger. "I want to help her help others. Samantha has a gift for fixing things, for bringing people together. I'd like to partner with her on a community outreach program." "We don't need your charity," David snapped. "And we sure don't need you disrupting our lives." The argument that followed revealed deeper fractures in their relationship than Samantha had realized. David's pride was wounded by their financial struggles, his fear of losing her to opportunities he couldn't provide evident in every sharp word. But as the confrontation escalated, Mark did something unexpected. He pulled out his wallet, not to offer money, but to show them a worn photograph of a young woman in scrubs, smiling beside a broken-down car in the rain. "This is Angela," he said quietly. "She looked just like you, Samantha. Same determination, same kindness in her eyes." Samantha stared at the photograph, and suddenly the pieces clicked into place. The woman in the picture wasn't just similar to her, she was wearing the exact same engagement ring. But before she could process this impossible connection, Mark revealed the detail that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her past. Angela was going to be married to a man named Marcus Johnson. He gave her that ring the week before she died, and after the accident, he disappeared completely. The ring was never found. Samantha's heart stopped beating as she looked down at the ring on her finger, the ring her father had given her mother 20 years ago, the only thing he'd left behind when he vanished from their lives forever. The revelation hit Samantha like a physical blow. Mark's voice trembles as he continues, "My daughter Emma was killed by a drunk driver 3 years ago. She was coming home from her job at a community center, just like where you volunteer. The last thing she did was help an elderly woman fix her flat tire on the side of the road." His eyes fill with tears as he pulls out his phone, showing Samantha a photo of a beautiful young black woman with the same kind eyes and gentle smile that Samantha recognizes in herself. "When I saw you stop to help me, when I saw that engagement ring." Emma had just gotten engaged too. She was so excited about her wedding, about starting her family. Mark's voice breaks completely. "I've been searching for a way to honor her memory, to find someone who embodies the same spirit of service she had. That's why I started this charity project. I need to create something meaningful from this pain." Samantha reaches across the table, her own tears flowing freely. "Mark, I had no idea. I'm so deeply sorry for your loss." The weight of understanding settles between them. This isn't about money or connections. This is about healing and purpose. "There's more," Mark continues, steadying his voice. "Emma left behind a trust fund specifically for women in underserved communities who demonstrate exceptional service to others. When I saw you helping me, then watched you at the community center with those children, I knew. You're exactly who Emma would have chosen." The shocking truth overwhelms Samantha. "You mean?" The charity project isn't just about fixing cars. It's about providing full college scholarships and business funding for women like you. Emma's legacy living on through people who embody her spirit of selfless service. Mark slides a document across the table. "This is a $50,000 grant, no strings attached. Use it for your wedding, your future, whatever you and David need." Samantha stares at the paperwork, her hands shaking. The financial pressure that's been crushing her and David for months could disappear in an instant. But more than that, she sees the profound connection between loss and hope, between Emma's memory and her own future. "I can't just take this money," Samantha whispers. "But I can honor Emma's memory by helping you build something beautiful." Together, they design a program that transforms lives. Samantha becomes the community coordinator, identifying women in need while Mark provides the resources. Their partnership creates a network of support that touches hundreds of families. The Emma Reynolds Foundation for Community Angels launches 6 months later, with Samantha delivering the keynote speech. 3 years ago, a young woman named Emma Reynolds died doing what she loved most, helping others, Samantha tells the packed auditorium. Today, her father Mark and I stand here not as strangers who met by chance, but as partners united by purpose. Emma's spirit lives on through every woman we support, every family we help, every act of kindness we inspire. David stands in the audience, beaming with pride. The grant allowed them to have their dream wedding and start their consulting business, but more importantly, it connected them to a community of giving that transformed their entire outlook on life. The financial stress that once threatened their relationship now seems insignificant compared to the profound joy they find in service. Mark takes the stage, his transformation complete. The broken man who lost his daughter has become a beacon of hope for others. "Samantha taught me that Emma's greatest gift wasn't the money she left behind, it was the example she set. Every time we help someone, every time you choose service over selfishness, Emma's legacy grows stronger." The foundation's first year exceeds every goal. 20 women receive full scholarships, 15 start successful businesses, and hundreds more receive emergency assistance. But the real magic happens in the connections formed, the community built, the lives changed not just by receiving help, but by learning to give it. As Samantha and Mark shake hands at the event's conclusion, she notices he's wearing a small pin with Emma's photo. "She would have loved you," he tells her. "And I think she would have been proud of what we've built together." "She's watching," Samantha replies with absolute certainty. "And she's smiling." The camera captures their final embrace, two unlikely allies whose chance meeting on a roadside became a movement of hope that continues to ripple outward, proving that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with the simple decision to stop and help a stranger in need. What did you think of Samantha and Mark's incredible journey? Have you ever experienced a moment where helping someone led to something bigger than you could have imagined? Share your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring real-life stories that prove kindness really can change the world.